Today's goal was an ambitious one. We wanted to take the tractor out one more time before the snow became too deep so that we could retrieve a final set of poplar logs we discovered last winter. The plan was to stop at the bunkhouse where we would grab our supplies and complete some odd jobs while we were there. If we were able to drive that far without any problems, we would then continue to the section of forest where the remaining logs were located. The tires slipped a little bit here and there, but the tractor moved well enough through the snow. However, we were approaching the infamous mud hole. If there was any place we would get stuck, it would be here. The tractor pushed through like a champ. However, I wouldn't want to be caught moving through the mud hole if the snow was any deeper. While we were at the bunkhouse, my dad and I decided to fashion a rocket stove using some leftover cinder blocks we had there. So we set the fire in here,
yeah.
And then it draws up
And up there.
and out of this hole.
Yeah.
And then this is, we knocked this piece out here so the fire can come through. That's the only modified piece we need in the whole setup. This top final piece is really just acting as a bit of a chimney.
Yeah. That square one we can find it good for it too.
Looks pretty basic, but apparently it's a really good system for cooking food and being efficient with firewood, so I think this can come in handy this winter actually.
Got it.
Yeah, it's looking good. You can definitely see a draw on it.
Yeah.
Long story short, I wasn't all that impressed with the cinder block rocket stove. I'd much rather build a small fire on the ground than deal with such a bulky setup. I'm not saying this type of stove wouldn't be useful for some applications, it's just not useful for anything I would need. However, I think the main benefit of the cinder block stove is that it does a good job at absorbing, holding, and radiating the heat of the fire. So that's that, moving on. Unfortunately, the tractor refused to restart. I suspected the issue lay with the ignition switch. Without a replacement, we had no choice but to abandon our mission. The poplar logs were just going to have to wait. Leaving the tractor behind, my dad and I hiked back home on foot. Before I could return, another snowstorm rolled through, and the snow deepened. Retrieving the logs was now completely out of the question. Considering the amount of snow on the ground, I would be extremely fortunate just to get the tractor back without burying it along the way. I returned on my own to survey the situation. My tractor could be alright at the build site for the winter, but if there was a way to get it back, I'd prefer to store it under a proper shelter. The day was already off to a poor start. Within 30 feet of its voyage, the snowmobile was already stuck. We've had many cold snowy days without any thaw in between. This made the snow crystals as fine as icing sugar, and the track just couldn't get any grip. I dug the sled out a total of 3 times before I decided the snow was just too deep and too fine for it to handle. I put the Jag back to bed and I strapped on a pair of snowshoes instead. My progress was painfully slow. The pull-behind sled weighed me down considerably in the powdery snow. Even though it was hard to walk with my snowshoes, the going would have been much tougher without them. It took an extra 2 hours, but I finally made it. Things didn't look favorable for getting the tractor back home. All the same, I replaced the faulty starter switch while I was there. The best thing to do now would be to cover the tractor as best I could and leave it as is until spring. With this amount of snow, I would be crazy to try driving it out. But then again, It would be a shame not to try. It was a bit of a struggle, but the tractor moved well enough. If I could make it through the mud hole one more time, I'd practically be home free. This was bad, real bad. As you can see, the tractor was buried up to its belly and up to the top of the rim on the back tire. I already dug out my snowmobile and my bunkhouse today. Why not my tractor too? Unfortunately, I don't have any footage of the tractor clawing its way out of the mud hole, mostly because I was too busy at the time to set the camera up again. As soon as I thought I was able to get out, I put it in gear and got out of there just as fast as I could. The camera simply wasn't my priority at the time. However, here I am on the other side of the mud hole, worn out, but happy to have the worst leg of the journey behind me. The last hurdle would be to drive the tractor across a large opening between two forest trails. This is where the snow was the deepest. This is the last video clip I took of my adventure. I was far too exhausted to film anything more, but you'll be happy to know that I was able to bring the tractor safely home. And it will stay there until spring. Never again will I allow myself to be caught driving the tractor through so much snow. Anyway, that's it for today. Take care, my friends, and I'll see you in the next one.